Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be covering 3 more of the most mysterious people to ever exist, ranging from the person who inspired today's ideas of magic and alchemy, all the way to a self-proclaimed time traveler. So make sure you guys stick around. Before that, comment the most mysterious person that you've ever heard about, or if you happen to think that you know any of these people before the video actually starts. So leave a comment below. This is the second part of the series already. I do have a third one planned, but if anything, I'm gonna link the first one below, and I'll also put like a little times thing on the screen, so make sure you do all that. But without wasting any more time, let's just jump right into it. So first up is Edward Kelley, also known as Edward Talbot. He was a convicted criminal and self-declared spirit medium in Renaissance England who worked with John Dee in his magical investigations. Now I know you're probably thinking, who's John Dee? Well, John Dee was a noted English mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, geographer, occultist, and consultant to Queen Elizabeth I. Now, the main part that we're going to be kind of sticking with is the occultist part, hence the whole magic and alchemy kind of thing. Over the centuries, he has come to seen as the archetype image of a magician, or whom many fictional magicians have been modeled after. So basically, any magician that you see trying to pull off these crazy magic tricks and such like that, they're all modeled after Kelley. Alright, so easy kind of comparison. Now, Kelley's early life is really obscure, but was probably born somewhere in Worcester, England. I know at least in New England we call it Worcester, in 1555, and may have worked as an apothecary's apprentice. He was certainly educated, and he knew Latin and possibly some Greek, and may have studied at Oxford under the name of Talbot, hence the name Edward Talbot or Edward Kelley. His early career was as a practicing lawyer, but according to some stories, Kelley had his ears cut off in London as a punishment for forgery, and thereafter he always wore a curious cap that encircled his head and face down to the chin to hide his deformity. That would suck. He got his ears chopped off for forging a signature or a letter or anything. Like, oh, I'm glad I have my ears, bro. Oh my god. Kelley first met Dr. John Dee in 1582, initially under the name Edward Talbot. Dee had already been unsuccessfully trying to contact angels with the help of a scryer or crystal gazer, and after an impressive first trial, Kelley became Dee's regular scryer or crystal gazer. A scryer is technically somebody that can predict the future or sees the future, and apparently the crystal gazer, it is like mostly used as a crystal ball. So that whole little trope of where they look into the crystal ball and they see your future, that's coming from this whole thing. The two men devoted huge amounts of time and energy to these spiritual conferences between 1582 and 1589. Kelley's angels, as he calls them, sometimes communicated to him in a special angelic or Enochian language, a kind of glossolalia, or basically speaking in tongues, which he claimed to be able to interpret, and only him. So we all know how this is going to go, right? Some modern cryptographers argue that Kelley actually invented the language himself, and it was unclear whether Dee was actually a victim or an accomplice in the scheme. But it nevertheless appears to be a true language with a vast vocabulary and a syntax and grammar of its own. So basically, if he made up this language, even if it was a made-up language, it was technically a true language because it had different verbiages, syntax, grammar, all of its own, you know what I mean? Like, it was a real language, like any other made-up language, like the one from Lord of the Rings, or the Star Trek languages, any of those random languages that are made up but actually have, like, you could use them in a conversation if you know the language too. This was what he was doing, basically, even though he made it up himself. In about 1583, Kelley claimed to have been led by a spiritual creature to discover a red powder, which, when used in concert with an alchemy book he obtained called the Book of Dunstan, he could prepare a red tincture, which would basically allow him to transmute base metals into gold. He reportedly demonstrated its power a few times over the years, including in Bohemia, which is in present-day Czech Republic, where he and Dee resided for several years. And from 1583 to 1586, Dee and Kelley lived in a nomadic life in Central Europe, continuing with their spiritual conferences, although Kelley was way more interested in alchemy than in scrying, before settling in Bohemia for a time. So they were traveling around before they actually settled down in Bohemia. The two ended up parting ways in 1587 after Kelley tried to persuade Dee that the angel Uriel had ordered the two men should share everything, including their wives. My boy was basically trying to finesse this guy's wife away, okay? Like, craziness, honestly. I don't know why he would even try that. It has been speculated that this was a way for Kelley to end the fruitless spiritual conferences so that he could concentrate on alchemy, which, under the patronage of Count Rosenberg, was the beginning of making Kelley on the way to be extremely wealthy. Alright, he was about to get super rich off this, so that's what he was trying to pursue instead of doing these spiritual conferences with Dee. While Dee kept his art mostly to himself, Kelley would hold public demonstrations of the art and gold making. And Dee would wisely decide to return to England in 1588 or 1589, they don't know exactly when. But by 1590, Kelley was living an opulent life in Bohemia, having convinced many influential people that he was able to produce gold, and he received several estates, large sums of money, and had even been made Baron of the Kingdom by Emperor Rudolf II in Prague. So he was popping off at this time. People were believing that he could just pull gold out of any random base metal. He was super popular, super famous at this point. He was even made a baron of just some random kingdom that he wasn't even from. Like, he was really doing his thing at this point, okay? However, in 1591, unable to meet the emperor's demands for producing alchemaic gold, Kelley was imprisoned, and he remained in various Bohemian prisons until he died while trying to escape in 1597 at the age of 42. Basically, the jig was up. They realized that he couldn't produce the gold that he was meant to be doing, you know what I mean? Like, he just wasn't keeping up with the job, and basically at that point they just locked him up and he died while he was trying to escape. I didn't find an exact cause of death, so I don't know exactly what killed him while he was trying to escape. This was as much as I could find. So that's all for Edward Kelley, or Edward Talbot, however you want to remember him, but we're moving on to the second person. Next up is Therese Neumann. Therese Neumann was born on Good Friday, April 8th, 1898 in a small village of Connersworth, Bavaria, Germany. So she was the oldest out of 10 children. On the 11th of March 1918, at the age of 20, Neumann underwent a severe nervous shock after an outbreak of a fire and later suffered from hysterical paralysis, blindness, and gastric troubles for several years. She was super messed up after this fire incident, and this isn't even the worst of it, alright? Just remember that. In 1926, a blood-colored serum began to ooze from her eyes, and during Lent of the same year, the stigmata, or wounds resembling those of Christ in the hands and feet, basically you could think of where he got the nails and stuff like that, where he's nailed up on the cross, that appeared on Teresa. This was some creepy stuff that was happening to Teresa, alright? Throughout the next 30 years, these continued to bleed on many Fridays, especially during the last 2 weeks of Lent, and they were accompanied by trances and other striking phenomena that attracted many visitors. She was becoming popular for this. People wanted to show up and see what was going on. Following her stigmatization, Teresa claimed to live without eating or drinking, being sustained only by Holy Communion. At the request of her bishop, she was subjected to the fortnight's investigation in 1927. Not this age's fortnight, okay? This was a different fortnight. Just so we're all clear, alright? I know we all want to make that meme. Later, the church authorities recognized this to have been inconclusive, as hysterical subjects are known to be able to sustain a complete fast for more than 3 weeks. And in 1932 and 1937, she was requested to submit another examination but refused, alleging that her father forbade her to do so. Basically, they were kind of getting a little sketched out at this point, because when you're having a mental break, apparently people can fast for up to 3 weeks. They were believing this at that point. And yeah, so they were just thinking that she was just going crazy. After that, her bishop issued no more permits for visits to her, which nevertheless reached a new peak after the years of World War II, when US soldiers and others were visiting Germany in large numbers. And after 1950, the passion ecstasies became much less frequent, though she continued to be visited by thousands each year until her death. Okay, so she was popular up until the point where she died, which was crazy. The controversy about the supernatural or purely neurotic origins of the phenomena still continue to this day. So we still have actually no real answers of what happened. All we know is that this accident and this fire happened, and then for the rest of her life, for random Fridays, especially during the last 2 weeks of Lent, she would just bleed profusely out of her eyes and palms of her feet. Anyways, going on to the third person and last for this entry. So last up on this list is John Titor. John Titor, as well as Time Travel _0, are pseudonyms used on the Time Travel Institute and Art Bell's post-to-post forums during 2000 and 2001 by a poster claiming to be an American military time traveler from 2036. In his online postings, Titor claimed to be an American soldier from 2036 based in Tampa, Florida. You guys think it's moist critical in the future? Imagine, that would be kind of crazy, huh? Tampa, Florida, I think he's from around that that some type of area. Anyways, he was assigned to a governmental time travel project and was sent back to 1975 to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer, which he said was needed to debug various legacy computer programs in 2036, a possible reference from the Unix year 2038 problem. The IBM 5100 runs on APL and basic programming languages. Titor said he had been selected for this mission specifically given that his paternal grandfather was directly involved with the assembly and programming of the 5100. In support of this, he described unpublicized features of the 5100, leading to assumptions that a computer scientist was behind the postings. Titor claimed to be on a stopover in the year 2000 for personal reasons and to collect pictures lost in the future Civil War to visit his family or to whom he spoke often. Basically, he wanted to come back and visit people that he supposedly knew back in this year, because we're going to get to this, but he says that there's going to be a future civil war going on and he's coming back to recover pictures. Whole big spiel that this guy's got. Alright. Titor also said that he had been for a few months trying to alert anyone that would listen about the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease spread through beef products and about the possibility of civil war within the United States. When questioned about them by an online subscriber, Titor also expressed an interest in mysteries such as UFOs, which he claimed remained unexplained in his time. Titor suggested that UFOs and extraterrestrials might be travelers from much further into the future than his own time, with superior time machines. Titor described his time machines on several occasions. In an early post, he described it as a stationary mass temporal displacement unit powered by two topspin dual positive singularities, producing a standard offset Tipler synsonoid.
I mean, it's just bullshit.
If you're super deep into science, you can probably let me know what this means. I'm just assuming this means a time travel machine, like straight up. I mean, I took biotech, I took decent science classes in school, and I am confused even rereading that off this. Like, dude, lost right now. The earliest post was more explicit, saying it contained the following. Now I'm going to list off the exact things, what it has. 2 magnetic housing units for dual micro singularities, an electron injection manifold to alter mass and gravity of the micro singularities, a cooling and X-ray venting system, gravity sensors or a variable gravity lock, 4 main cesium clocks, not sure what that is to be real with you, 3 main computer units, and according to the post, the device was installed into the rear of a 1966 Chevy Corvette convertible. The post later mentioned a 1987 truck with a 4-wheel drive too, so I'm not exactly sure on which one, but
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
this is all from his word too, so, you know, take it all with an entire bag of salt at this point. You know what I mean? I wouldn't believe none of this. This is all online on forums too. Like back when the internet was first starting, you know how people be faking stories today. Like back then, I'm sure they were going wild. Although invoking the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, whereby events from his timeline may differ from our own, Titor also expressed assurance that the difference were very minimal. As such, his descriptions have been interpreted as predictions and compared with historical events ever since 2001. The most immediate of Titor's predictions were an upcoming civil war in the United States, which, hey, might not be too wrong about, having to do with order and rights. He described it as beginning in 2005 with civil unrest surrounding the presidential election of that year. This civil conflict that he characterized as having a Waco type event every month that steadily gets worse would be pretty much at everybody's doorstep and erupt by 2008. As a result of the war, the United States would split into 5 regions based on various factors and differing military objectives. This civil war, according to Titor, would end in 2015 with a brief but intense World War III. Not yet. He's not closed off, you know, he might have been 10 years off. We were pretty close this year, last year, whatever, but, you know, not 2015. Titor refers to the exact exchange as End Day. Washington, D.C. and Jacksonville, Florida are specifically mentioning as being hit. After the war, Omaha, Nebraska would be the new U.S. capital. Titor was vague as to the exact motivations and causes for World War III. Dude, I have never even imagined the state of Nebraska. That's one of those states when you're in America that you forget it's a state. At one point, he characterized the hostilities as being led by border clashes and overpopulation. He also pointed to the contemporary conflict between Arabs and Israel as not a cause but rather a milestone that precedes the hypothetical World War III. Titor claimed that as a 13-year-old in 2011, he joined the Fighting Diamondbacks, a shotgun infantry unit in Florida, for at least 4 years. In other posts, he described himself as hiding from the war, so different conflicting stories that he's putting out there. Obviously, people like this you don't believe. Like, it's pretty simple, guys. Most things online you don't believe until you'd have to see like some real proof, real evidence that things happen. Most stuff you see is fakes. Like, let's just be real. Titor claimed that the Everett Wheeler model of quantum physics, better known as the many worlds interpretation, was actually correct. According to Titor, this caused a new time stream to form because of his time travel. This makes his predictions not falsifiable, since believers say that the events were averted by Titor's postings. So since he posted, these events didn't actually happen, so he's not technically wrong. We're just on a different world line, timeline thing is basically his whole description of what actually happened. Private investigator Mike Lynch found no registry evidence, past or present, of any individual named John Titor. So like we all already established, it's an alias, it's like a pseudonym, fake name kind of thing. He did, however, identify the John Titor Foundation, a for-profit company formed on September 16, 2003, with no office and no address other than a rented post office box in Kissimmee, Florida. An IP address connected with Titor, also geolocated to Kissimmee. So this is where things started to get a little sketchy. In 2009, a report by John Hutchinson of the Hoax Hunter website named Larry Harbor, a Florida entertainment lawyer, as the CEO of the foundation. Lynch concluded that Larry Haber, or Harbor, however you say his name, and his brother Richard, a computer scientist, were very likely the men behind John Titor, who they actually introduced in 1998, accompanied by different predictions, including chaos due to the Y2K bug, which, to be honest, I'm too young. Like, I was born in 1997, so Y2K I think was like 2000. John Hutchinson also reported that John Titor is a trademark registered with the United States Patent and Trademarks Office. The Titor trademark is now classified as abandoned to this day though. Recently, like honestly, I wasn't even gonna put this guy on the list, but I recently just watched a new show. Well, it's not new to me, because it's pretty old. It's called Steins Gate. If you watch anime or anything like that, I would personally recommend it. Honestly, pretty fire, but it's basically this entire story in an anime form, kind of, you know, different type of telling of it. But fire show, kind of explains the same concept of this, goes through the whole John Titor thing. And yeah, I would recommend that to you if that's the type of shit you like. And if not, I mean, hey, I don't really care either way. Anyways, that's been it for this part. Like I said, I at least have another part or two worth of people, but if you made this far, comment anybody that you want me to see, or any mysterious person that you've ever heard about that I have not mentioned so far. Like I said, I'm gonna make sure I link part 1. And yeah, stay safe, stay dangerous. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, do whatever you want to do. Anyways, appreciate you watching, and yeah, stay safe, stay dangerous. Deuces.